This fairy tale begins with a small pot of ficus that stood on the windowsill of an elderly sick grandmother. The old woman lived on the 7th floor and hardly ever went out. She loved her ficus and knew that Ornis lived in it. He had been there, and they often shared tea. He had been living there and was accustomed to his, so they even drank tea together from a beautiful antique cup with a saucer. Ornis sat on the pot's edge, content with a cookie crumb. If grandmother dozed, Ornis snapped too. So they spent their time chatting and having tea. If the grandmother quietly dozed off, Ornis would crawl into his green home and take a nap too. But something unexpected happened. Grandmother passed away from old age. There was a pot with a ficus and Ornis left without an owner. The relatives who moved into the apartment threw the ficus in the trash. Who needs it? What an old thing. Little Ornis cried, but he held on. He firmly believed that such a wonderful flower could be liked by someone. The trash was taken to the dump and buried under a pile of junk. Ornis was scared. He wasn't used to being treated like this. His sadness knew no bounds. But he is a little wizard. And from the dirty piles of trash, huge stems of the ficus rose up high. The leaves, strong and green, spread out so wide that one could take shelter from the scorching rays of the sun in their shade. Ornis climbed up the stem to the leaf of the ficus and looked around as far as his gaze could reach. Piles of trash rose up around and a stench hung in the air. Dirty people were rummaging through these piles, pulling out something and stacking it up. Ornis pressed himself against the vein of the leaf and lay down so that no one would notice him. 3 wanderers decided to take a nap in shade of ficus. They were talking, and Ornis accidentally overheard them. The first one said, "I wish I could live differently, not like a pig. This trash is in the way. As long as it's lying here, I have to work here." The second one replied, "I'm tired of this stinky trash too. I was brought here by necessity, and I haven't become rich." The third one declared it was impossible to live like this. People started throwing away a lot of things, and in general, we need to build factories and recycle trash into something useful. After chatting, they fell asleep. Ornis fell into thought. He had always lived in a quiet apartment, and his world was cloudless. Here chaos reigned, and people were suffering. Ornis, though a little ficus man, was still a wizard and wanted to help everyone. Moreover, he felt very sorry for all the plants that were dying under the heaps of trash. In the light of the evening dawn, he suddenly saw a thorny rose rising from the other side of the landfill, so huge that its thorns glimmered menacingly in the moonlight. In the blooming flower, he saw such a lovely flower mistress. It was pink, so wonderful that the branches of the ficus themselves crawled across the landfill towards the giant rose. Rosina, that was the name of the beauty. She looked in surprise at the green Ornis, in a prickly suit, standing on a shoot with a leaf. Enchanted by Rosina, Ornis sang to her about his feelings, and the branches of the ficus gently embraced the thorny rose. Rosina wasn't a proud one. She liked Ornis too. She had never met such a green, gallant gentleman. Now they were sitting together on the intertwined branches of their plants. They were kicking their legs and talking about sorts of nonsense. Then Ornis remembered about Grandma. He felt sad, also about the wanderers. He told Rosina everything, and together they began to think about how to get rid of the landfill. While our heroes were thinking about how to save nature, the world itself began its salvation. Giant roots and stems of plants were rising through layers of years of trash. The plants resembled a very dense forest of the ancient world. In each one lived a flower person. The little wizards gathered around and spoke the words. Miracle, appear. Earth, wake up! Shake off your chains and rise, you again. And it happened. As the carpet of trash rolled up and swirled in a whirlwind, it then rose into the sky and disappeared into the blue. The earth was covered in bubbles, as if after a severe burn. Nothing else grew on it except for the giant plants. But then something happened. A rain of seeds fell from every plant onto the earth. The giants themselves fell and turned to ash. The first sprouts were rising from the earth, and our little flower wizards were crying with joy. They gathered in one place and thought about where they could settle. But then a strong wind rose and blew towards them. The wizards flew off in different directions. "Goodbye, goodbye. See you later," they shouted. Ornis was holding Rosina's hand tightly. They were flying on a little web towards the south. Waking up in the morning, the people who lived in the dump found themselves lying on a beautiful green meadow. And there isn't a trace of trash. But that's a completely different story.